Hi there, welcome back to the Legacy Tax Hub. My name is Eunice Migwi, the founder of Her Legacy Consulting, and today I want to talk about eTIMS. eTIMS is something that has been going on for a while, and thing is, I'm realizing there's still a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions about what eTIMS is, how eTIMS work, and so this episode today is about clarifying some things on eTIMS, demystifying eTIMS, and just helping you understand eTIMS and just making sure you see how eTIMS is beneficial to you as an individual, as a business owner, amongst other things. So welcome, and I'm going to dive right in by saying, one, eTIMS is not a tax. I've heard this so many times, so it's like someone is like, oh, you're telling me to get an eTIMS receipt, but every time I go to ask for an eTIMS receipt, I'm told I have to pay more. And I know where that comes from, because how eTIMS came to be originally, and this is where the misconception comes in, so stick with me. We had VAT and ETR machines, and then KRA realized that as much as people are registered for VAT and doing ETR receipts, people don't remit the true sales. So they decided they need to have something that's very real time, and hence they introduced the ETR machine that transmits the sales data automatically to KRA, which is now what was called the TIMS compliant ETR. But the challenge came in the fact that the TIMS compliant ETR was very expensive, or just not affordable for most business owners. And when it's all said and done, you can't make me complying costly. Even on the tax authority side, they need compliance to be as seamless as possible for the taxpayer. So they went back, or someone went back to the drawing boards, like, okay, as much as we want this to work, the TIMS ETR to work, people are not buying because it's too expensive. You can't have the cheapest eTIMS ETR, TIMS ETR being like 50k to 100, 150 or more. So they created what is called now the solution, which is eTIMS. So I get when people assume that eTIMS is a tax, because originally it was attached to VAT, and you say ideally VAT is a tax that you pay. So when eTIMS was introduced, it was introduced as an alternative to buying an ETR machine. So you didn't need to purchase an ETR machine for you to be compliant. You just needed to onboard on eTIMS. But as happens when implementing some things, I think someone was like, okay, we are getting the VAT registered businesses, but what about those businesses who are not registered for VAT? What happens to them? We still need to know what they're making, because their income is also part of the big basket, or the big bucket that makes the tax revenue that is needed to sustain this country. So they were like, okay, we need to also include non-VAT registered businesses to the eTIMS platform. And the VAT registration and non-registration is in terms of the revenue threshold. So for you to be registered for VAT, legally or ideally, you need to be making at least 5 million annually. This means you're doing monthly revenue of around 416,000 or so there. So if you're not at the 5 million threshold, you do not need to register for VAT. If you do, well and good, because remember, it is voluntary to register, but absolutely no one can force you to register for VAT if your business is below 5 million in annual revenue, and no one can penalize you for not registering for VAT if your business is below 5 million. But if your business exceeds the 5 million mark, then you need to register for VAT. So it was in that basis where the eTIMS confusion came in. So when eTIMS was being launched, or when it was being announced, or when it was being marketed, the idea came out as eTIMS is a solution for businesses doing more than 5 million, which translated to businesses registered for VAT. But when they changed it, and it was inclusive of all businesses irrespective of the size, you need to have eTIMS, not much communication was done about that. Hence why at times you'll go to a certain business and you ask them for your eTIMS receipt, they tell you you have to pay more, because their theory is if you want a tax invoice, then you need to pay more, which is wrong, because eTIMS is not a tax. eTIMS is an invoice management system. Basically, eTIMS is just a platform that helps KRA know what you are making, so that they know how much they expect from you in terms of the taxes you need to pay. Remember, I told you guys, paying taxes is not optional, and it is actually your duty as a citizen to pay taxes. So because a lot of people are not compliant, are not filing their returns, are not declaring the right amount of taxes, you find that, and I don't think I'm making a case for the government or justifying the borrowings and all these things, but you find that the revenue is not collected in the right amount, so they end up having to borrow. And when they borrow, the cost of living has to go high because they need to make these payments. You know, it's a whole chain of things where you need to do your civic duty, pay taxes. When you pay taxes, the taxes that you pay are able to get you some of these services that come from the public service and the government and all that. So they wanted the tax burden to stop being on a certain few, which ideally is the pay people and employment people, because they don't have a choice. That money is taxed at source. But for most small business owners, they were either not filing their returns or not declaring anything and all these things. So eTIMS was introduced to try and make all this systemized, regularized. Forgive my Kikuyu, but you get what I'm saying. So it's just a regulation to try and make sure everyone is doing their part in the aspect of tax filing and tax revenue and their contribution to the tax basket. So eTIMS, not a tax, it's simply an invoice management system. If today I'm billing someone 50,000, 100,000, I'm not registered for VAT, but I am able to give them a tax invoice. We're clear so far? Makes sense? Okay. So here's why eTIMS is important to you, because you'll be like, oh, I don't need to get it then, etc. But eTIMS is good because it will help you claim all expenses that you pay for. Ideally, whether you realize it or not, you are paying a tax in everything that you're doing. Today, if you go to fuel, there's tax in fuel. If you go to a restaurant, you go to Java for coffee, you go to CJ's for what, you go where, anywhere you go, there's a tax that you're paying. There's an expense that you're incurring. This expense is not meant to go into thin air. You're meant to use this expense to reduce your tax liability. This doesn't matter whether you're in employment or a business, whatever you do, you're meant to be able to claim all the expenses that you pay when filing your tax returns, and that's how they're able to reduce. So if today you go to the supermarket, you do shopping, you pay 5,000, if you check your receipt, you'll notice that 5,000 has tax. So it's up to you to make sure when you go to the supermarket, you give them your PIN and ask them to give you an eTIMS receipt, such that that is recognized as a purchase that you made, such that at the end of the year, when you're filing your returns, you'll already have those expenses. And what happens with eTIMS is the moment you get that eTIMS document and you give your PIN, then an expense file is being created on your tax account. So every expense or every purchase you make or every single thing that you buy, you are generating, or rather whoever uses your PIN and says you paid for X or you paid for Y or you paid for Z, then you're generating an expenses file, which when you file your returns will reduce your tax liability. so many ways, but you need to understand, even if you have 1,000,000 receipts today, even if you have 1,000,000 invoices, if you did not give your PIN, then that does not count as an eTIMS receipt. You can get the receipt, it will show you a QR code, it will show tax, but so long as you did not give your KRA PIN, then that cannot be counted as your expense. So eTIMS basically attaches every expense with your personal PIN or your KRA. It might be your personal PIN, it might be your business PIN, or anything else for that matter. So this is most extremely important for business owners, because today, if you do sales of, let's say you're just about to get into the VAT threshold, so let's go with 5 million. If you do sales of 5 million, nice, let's talk of last year. We are in the period of filing 2024 returns, right? And then in 2024, you did sales of 5 million. If you don't have expenses and 5 million is what counts as your taxable income, you would be charged 30%, because tax is 30% of your income. You'd be charged 30% of 5 million. That is when you don't have any expenses. So ideally, you end up paying 1.5 million in taxes, which is a lot, honestly. It's a lot. And that's why it's not 30% of 5 million. You're told in the course of you running that business, there's a lot of expenses you're incurring, right? So many expenses. At times you don't even realize the expenses. You took a client for lunch, you bought some notebooks for branding, you went for a shoot because you're creating content, business expenses, all in the line of growing your business. All those expenses, employees, if you take all of them, let's say, again, we're working with our 5 million, and then you find that your business expenses were adding up to 4 million, then your taxable revenue is going to be 5 million minus 1 million. So your taxable revenue is going to be 1 million shillings, and the tax that you're going to pay will be 30% of 1 million. So on the same income of 5 million, when you have your eTIMS receipts, eTIMS expenses, instead of paying 1.5 million in taxes, you just pay 300,000 in taxes. Can you get it? Do you get the essence of eTIMS and why it's important to you? That's number one. It helps you pay less tax. Everyone wants to pay less tax. And what a better way to pay less tax than doing it the right way? And all you need to do is simply get a receipt, an eTIMS receipt for that expense you're already paying. Please note, I'm not saying spend more or you purchase more. You're already incurring expenses. You're already paying for things that can reduce your tax liability. The only thing that you need to do is make sure you're getting an eTIMS receipt for all your purchases. Go fuel, let's say the company car, get your eTIMS receipt. Go, take the team for vacation, or what are they called? Team building? Yeah, get that receipt. Travel, you had to book a flight to go meet who? Make sure, absolutely everything, so long as it's an expense, you have the ability to get a tax receipt for it. And what this does is it reduces your tax liability the right way. Again, you're not paying any extra money for eTIMS. You're simply getting that receipt as a tax receipt. That makes sense, So please get your eTIMS receipt. Remember, eTIMS is not a tax. It's completely not tax. It's just a system. So one of my favorite things about eTIMS is I feel that eTIMS is actually helping a lot of businesses streamline things, because you'd find that in the past, a lot of people don't know how much they spend in X or how much they spend in Y. But now when you have to be adamant and get a document every time, you're able to start keeping your files. You're able to track, I paid this much, So the more when you get documents, you're also able to track your finances, because there are those things that get lost in the cracks of business. Let's say something like, let's say you use Uber or Bolt. Now, for you to get an eTIMS or a tax receipt, you have to be, let's say, on Bolt business or Uber business. Yeah, if you're doing that, you're getting your expenses or you're paying your travel at the end of every month. So the good part of that is, if you did know how much you are spending on travel and courier and all these things, the moment you're getting a document that summarizes, then you're able to see, oh, okay, I spent X amount on transport. Does that make sense for my business? You know, if this expense is not related to your business or it's not adding any value to your business, you're able to do the right decisions. Because again, part of tax compliance and running a good business and just keeping the numbers is understanding what costs you need to cut so that you're running an optimum business. So with eTIMS, because you now need to get documentation and you're seeing summaries of your expenses and you're seeing where every single coin is going, it also helps you now be able to keep your finances the right way, do your bookkeeping, analyze your expenses, and make better decisions for your business so that you can grow the right way. And with that, I will leave that there, because I don't like overwhelming you guys. Tax can be a lot, can be so much. So let me leave that there today. If you have any questions, reach out, comment, DM. You have a specific inquiry, I'm always available to answer questions. Thank you for watching. See you next time.